Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this wonderful program, National Matters. And in the studio with me, is Mr. Mutisunge. Mr. Mutisunge is the General Secretary from the Economic Association of Zambia. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, sir.
Please tell the nation, everyone who comes on set must be a friend and a relative of the Camnet family out there.
Sure.
Are you married?
No, I'm not married.
Oh, okay. So we'll distribute your number to to the nation since these are national matters. And who is Mr. Mutisunge?
Okay, so thank you very much. Mutisunge is the National Secretary for the Economics Association of Zambia. Mutisunge is an economist. He's a banker at the same time, so he wears different hats. And Mutisunge is a patriotic Zambian.
A patriotic Zambian?
Yes.
In the interest of people like me who would want to join you, what are your qualifications?
Okay, so Mutisunge has...
When were you born? Which school you went to? Just run me through quickly.
Okay, so Mutisunge is 37 years old. He was born in 1983, and he studied at Copperbelt University, where he did his Bachelor of Business Administration, and then his Master of Accounting and Finance from the University of Zambia. And then he's also still studying to be a financial risk manager.
Financial risk manager?
Yes.
And what is that? That is...
So it entails understanding financial markets and risks as well. So it's cutting across credit risk, financial risk, and so I should say things that you know, your interest rates, your exchange rates, and general, credit quality of counterparties, and it just covers a whole lot of metrics. So it's exciting. Commodities and everything, your copper, oil, and all that is encapsulated in that.
Okay. I want to ask Mr. Mutisunge, this is the first time, I must say, that I've come across a person from Eastern Province with a normal name. Because most of them, you find their COVID-19 banda, dashboard ingulube, tirienji, tingone kuti, twasova, masuzio, all those names. But Mutisunge means keepers.
Keepers.
And that's a prayer from God, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
No wonder you are successful. At least I've found one of the people from Eastern Province who has got a normal background. And those of you joining us, by the way, if you ever come to Zambia, he comes from the eastern part of the world, of Zambia, and I come from the northern. Between us, I don't know what happened. We are tribal cousins. So never come and say what I've said to him. He will sue you. Nevertheless, Mr. Mutisunge, this is National Matters. And I want us to look at wealth creation. I want to say that the people in the West Indies are watching right now, and we are live in the West Indies on one of the prominent radio and the television station. It covers the whole Caribbean island. Now, I know that even before I came to the studio, the chairman of the station was waiting for the signal.
Wow. But
one of the things that I've also wondered, from the time I started going to the Caribbean islands, in 1987, their money has not changed.
Okay.
It is 3 Eastern Caribbean dollar to 1 US dollar from 1987 to now. And the country, if you like, to cross it from one end to another, including traffic lights, it will take you 45 minutes, you are through. But they have more hotels than Zambia has. they have, in short, why would a small island like Antigua, which has no copper mines, doesn't have big agriculture fields like Zambia has, and what maintain their dollar at a certain level, and Zambia being where we are, we keep on inflation, reducing the dollar, the kwacha against the dollar. What is the cause?
Thank you very much, sir. So I'm glad that you've asked that question. So it actually takes me to resources, first of all.
Resources.
Yes. Allow me to go as far back as the Bible. Parable of the talents. Individuals were given, according to their ability. Some kept what they had, put it in a drawer, expecting by the time the master comes back, they'll give him back exactly what he gave them. Others multiplied. And it was very clear that the master had wealth. So everyone has different abilities. So I'll bring it back home. If we look at jurisdictions across the world, people have resources. Go to DRC, they've got so much copper, they've got gold. We also have copper, gold, and there are jurisdictions like Switzerland, for instance. They don't have minerals. All they do is they just process, they transfer, So I think it's very important to understand that much as, yes, you have the resources, it's how you are applying those resources. How are you extracting wealth out of it? So if you talk about exchange rates, exchange rate stability is a function of a number of things. So if you have wealth, the question is, do you own that wealth? Or do you have foreigners owning that wealth in your country? So it is pointless to have wealth in your country, which is being managed by people that are not citizens of that country. Because then what they do is, when they extract that wealth, they externalize that money to their countries, and that's why their countries are where they are. So we need to start thinking of harnessing the wealth to remain in this country. So for instance, if we talk about the mines, if we talk about the arable land that we have, agricultural potential, do we own the land? Do we own the mines? Do we own the companies within our country? And if we did own, then a simple example is, you would never be worried about the dollar, the exchange rate, if you were manufacturing, say, Toyota vehicles in Zambia. Because then you'll be buying those vehicles in Kwacha. But the fact that you have to import, parity then also comes in. Now you're worried, you're looking for dollars. But imagine if that Toyota vehicle was a vehicle that was manufactured in Zambia. Then you wouldn't worry about the exchange rate. You'd be buying it in Kwacha. So we tend to worry, exchange rate then comes in, because some of the materials that we are using are not in Zambia. We have to import. But it is sad sometimes to find that the same copper that is in your backyard has to be exported, and someone out there, say in China, has to make cables which you then import back. But imagine how we would cut that distance if we started making cables in Zambia. That's the value addition process. So you find that...
Well, we had companies like Zamefa, you remember?
Yes, it's actually still...
Zamefa used to produce, and I still believe that they produce some of the best copper cables in the world.
Yes.
And we don't promote companies like Zambia.
Well, I totally agree.
So to say that these things are produced here and they are sent there, would you say that our policies are wrong? Government policies, would you say that they are wrong?
I'd say yes and no, because I'd say policies are there, but are they adequate enough? Maybe they are not. A good example for, say, Zamefa. It's been there for a long time, but Zamefa would have been a far bigger company than it is right now. So why hasn't Zamefa done well? So we shoot ourselves in the foot. Half the companies that have given business to Zamefa do not pay Zamefa on time. So if you don't pay your companies on time, how do you expect them to survive? It's a problem. So we need to start thinking about paying companies on time. So if Zamefa is making cables, the companies that they're selling cables to are not paying them, then you're killing Zamefa. So we have a testimony of companies that would have been so massive in Zambia, but because of the mentality we have killed these companies. I'll give you an example. There are companies that are doing well. If you drive to Kafue, you will find Kafue steel. Do you know that the steel that is then, manufactured in Kafue is the same steel that they used for the rail line that the Houtren uses in South Africa? That's a testimony of a company that has done well for itself. But
our company in Zambia?
Yes.
Yeah.
The steel that the Kafue company is doing is the same steel that they used for the Houtren in South Africa. We need more of Kafue steels. We need more of the trade kings in Zambia. Imagine if we had 20 other trade kings. Look at how trade kings has penetrated the African markets. They are winning awards, but that's what we need as an example. So what can we learn from them that they have done better than other companies? You see, it's not enough to just have one trade kings, but if we had 20 of those.
But why is it that also, Mr. Motisunge, instead of you watching Camnet TV, you prefer to watch other... What's the rationale?
Well, I think that's where I was driving to say we need to start believing in our own. We need to start creating our own content. But then all this is also shaped by policy. We need to make it favorable for locals to be able to survive. One thing that locals have really complained about is if an international company comes into Zambia, you want to give them a tax holiday for 5 years. But if a local company starts a business, you don't give them a tax holiday. You start taxing them from day one. And if you start taxing a company from day one, I think that's retrogressive. It becomes a little bit of a challenge. So you find that the local companies are there, but then the conditions sometimes do not favor them.
So are you saying that, in essence, Zambians are overly taxed?
Honestly, yes. My biggest concern with the African tax structure, most African nations, the tax structure is a reflection of the amount of money that a particular government is looking to raise. You know that debt, for example, is not a secret in Africa. Most African countries have huge debt burdens, and they're looking to service that debt. And you know the government is not a business. So then they will look to raising money through taxation. So you find that those countries with higher debt burdens are then the countries that then have higher tax rates. So you find that a higher tax rate means the government will collect more money and tax revenues, which then they will use for other programs. But you see, a higher tax means lesser disposable income. It means I can't save. So the savings culture is also driven by your taxation rate. So the higher the tax, what will a person remain with to be able to invest and to save? It becomes a bit of a challenge, but we are in a catch-22 situation where we are, because look, we look to now saying how can we do things better, you know.
Will you define to the nation and to me, Mr. Motisunge, what is wealth creation?
So wealth creation, in a nutshell, is just amassing of assets or items of value in a sustainable way. That is what wealth creation is. Wealth creation should be differentiated from the drawing line there is sustenance. Is it sustainable enough? You see, so wealth can deteriorate or it can increase depending on how you use your human capital. That's wealth management. So are you managing your wealth wisely? So you find there are those individuals that they start a business. They make so much money. They're plowing back. So you see, when you make money, you can decide whether to plow back what you are making in terms of earnings to grow your business, or you can start spending. But once you spend, just be prepared for a downfall. So you'd find that most individuals do get, and I'll be very honest, there's that level of excitement when you make money. I'm sure you've heard of people who were so rich back then, but today they're a shadow of what they used to be. They didn't manage their wealth properly. But then there are those that are wise. You know, they manage their wealth in a wiser fashion, and their wealth has continued to grow. You know, so, and the interesting thing about wealth creation is you can actually create wealth from nothing. Wealth is not really about having money in the beginning. There are people who started from nothing. It's really a human capital mindset. It's a person's mindset. It's a person's brain.
Well, I can give an example. I can attest to what you have said, Mr. Mutisunge, because this Camnet TV,
yes,
it's a product of just a concept. My wife and I just saying,
wow,
we need to go there. When we began, we didn't even have the cameras, but when we started putting the things together, we bought 2 cameras. At the time, we were switching on the signal. We only had 2 cameras, and the Camnet began. So today, somebody may sit out there and looking, we receive hundreds of letters, please help us with finances. Little do they know that we would want to beef up on cameras, would want to beef up on vehicles, even for journalists. But like you said,
yes,
I agree with you, mindset. And I normally say that poverty is in the mind.
Exactly.
When somebody is bankrupt up there, even the clothes will show and everything, because for me to look smart,
yes,
Mr. Mutusunge, I don't have to go to the most expensive boutique.
No.
I can go in Sarawa and get nice clothes, wash them up. When I dress, people will think I'm a millionaire, waiting for my time to come and go and shop in London. So like you are saying,
yes,
poverty is in the mind.
True.
But how can we, as a nation, okay, we have blown it. No pointing of fingers, because like I say, excuse me, like I say, you know, sometimes I sound controversial because I know what I want to get in life. And I have never gone to kneel down to ask the government, please do this for us, do this. As an individual, as a pastor, there are so many pastors, there are so many bishops. If we all go to kneel to the government, how much money does the government make? The government has to pay soldiers, it has to pay police officers, it has to pay all. It is so overburdened that me should go there and start saying, Munichekereko, this government Yanganepo syndrome, what can you say about it?
A very interesting concept. I totally agree, and I couldn't have said it any better. We need to move away from the handout mentality to having a commercial mindset. A lot of initiatives have failed to help people because they are merely handouts. It's the concept of, should I give you fish or I should teach you how to fish? Sustainability. Very, very important. For any economy to thrive, in fact, the government does not drive an economy. It is the private sector. The private sector is made up of entrepreneurs, companies, and all these commercial initiatives. When we start commercializing issues, then we are talking about generating monies. It moves from a grant to some sort of a loan, where you know that, yes, if I'm given a seed, I have to give it back. I have to give it back with the mindset that there is someone else that will need to be helped, and I would have graduated from a person who got a seed, and I'm running a business and my business has grown. So it's a creation of entrepreneurs, and when you create entrepreneurs will then create jobs. I think the misconception we've always had, and that's something that as the Economics Association of Zambia we are trying to really change, is we don't target job creation. We're targeting in creation of entrepreneurs, because we know that when we target jobs, you can lose your job tomorrow. But if we create an entrepreneur, there's sustainability, and an entrepreneur will then hire people.
So put it this way, Mr. Mutisonge, you are educated. You've got all these degrees and you are loading up more degrees. Question, in your mind, are you learning so that you become a director in a bank, or are you learning or you're having this so that you can become an entrepreneur and help the economy?
Well, let me answer for myself, and then I'll answer it in general. When I graduated from school and I started my first job, the mindset was to get to the top, get a job, work so hard, become an MD one day. And I think a few years ago, it meant that I would have arrived. But getting to, when I joined the Economics Association of Zambia, when I started understanding, the topology of the economy, and I started seeing how, wealth is unevenly distributed, and then I also discovered that there are certain things that I'm good at, which I do naturally. I started to ask myself, maybe if I started to do these things, how can I do these things and earn myself money? Then that was the genesis of an entrepreneurial mindset. Suffice to say, there's always that one thing that you can do effortless. There's always that one thing that you have interest in so much. And the question is, how can you then harness that talent, that thing that God has given you to do, to make money? That's where you find a person is a lawyer, top-notch lawyer. They've won cases, but they become bored. Next, you find them running a coffee shop. How? Because running coffee is entrepreneurship, and that's what they are good at, and it's making them money. So there is that recognition to say, okay, we've learned all these things we've learned, but they're not paying us as much as if I was the owner of this thing. And that's what then motivates you and gets you out of your comfort zone and pushes you, stretches you. And that's the beginning of taking risk, and you want to be an entrepreneur. The education system is one area that has not done us justice. I was listening to a program on BBC. It was about Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The name in itself, MIT, Institute of Technology, you would definitely think it's a science university. But guess what? The bulk of them were MBAs. They offer MBAs to these guys who have studied computer science, and they've got engineering backgrounds. These guys have ideas. Half the class are not people who've gone there because they want to graduate and become chief executive officers. In fact, they want to run their own companies. But they are thinking, we are tech savvy, but we don't understand business management. So by the time they graduate, this guy is already a startup and is going into business. That's in the US. Let's bring it back home. The education system, if I go to primary school, I don't remember in my days when we had courses that talked about entrepreneurship. I didn't even know what entrepreneurship was. Probably I memorized it and it ended there. But that mindset of saying, I want to go to university so that when I graduate, I start running my own business. Of course, it's got its own challenges. So I feel like, and then the education system has also focused so much on degrees. But if you go to India, you will appreciate that it is not much of a degree, but a trade that's making people money. We don't pay that particular attention to a trades training institute because those are hands-on. That's where you teach people how to become mechanics. By the time the guy is graduating, he's already fixing cars. He's making money. He's an entrepreneur. But we have brainwashed ourselves with degrees, thinking that if you have a degree, then you have arrived. There are a lot of people who've got degrees, but they have failed to apply those degrees. And if you find that, you will notice that the most successful business people I have come across, even in this country, are people that did not even go to university. They started small. The guy he had a spaza shop, or the guy was selling cooking oil. A guy was selling talk time, slowly but surely. But now when you go and check, he's got 50 booths, and he's collecting so much money, and he's hiring people with degrees.
What you have said, Mr. Mutisunge, I have always told this story in my preaching. When we were at school, from grade 4 there, I was at Broadway Primary School in Kabwe, from grade 4 to grade 7.
Yes, sir.
In our class, during that time in the 70s, there were 5 streams, A, B, C, D, 5 streams.
Yes, sir.
And in those days, we were 40 in each class. So when you pass, they used to take on the notice board, grade 4A, they are 240, and they will grade you according to the number or the passing mark. So you find out of the 240, there is number 1, number 2, up to 240.
Okay.
Now there was this man in our class. He was always number 40 in our class.
Okay.
He was always number 40. The only time he passed to number 39 was when one pupil was sick, but he came to write. And I normally tell a story that became something. The whole school knew that he has passed number 39. He has gone to number 39, and he would tell people, he lifted the collar, says, it was very hilarious. But here's the deal. Whenever they totaled up everything, he was number 240.
Wow.
The whole Broadway school. The man who was always number 1 in our class, when you total all the 240, he was either 1, 2, 3, somewhere there.
Okay.
When we graduated, life began. These guys went to university and everything. You know that the one who was taking as number 1 at Broadway, he ended up owning a stationery shop in Lusaka. The 240 student, probably he was the wealthiest of my friends.
Wow.
The wealthiest. He died recently, but he was the wealthiest. When one time I found him along Chachacha, and he says, Moses, shakwata number yo. I said, you compute it. He says, boy, ulimunandi, I can tell you, I don't know how to use the phone. Chita compute. And when I computed the number, my phone number was the only one in his phone. I said, how do you run the businesses with all these contacts? He says, boy, ulimunandi tete nkufishena alikuwa te book. So ngamulempele number. He will say, I'm in a hurry, just write. And he goes there, but very wealthy. All his children, from first to last, they all went overseas for education. He didn't even know how to speak good English. But when it comes to money, he said, boy, I know what 1,000 kwacha is. So that's what you are saying.
Yes.
And that said, Mr. Mutisonge, what can you advise government as an economist to this time bomb of youth unemployment? Because there are a lot of youths out there who've been to school, who've been what? They are just waiting for the government to create jobs. What would you say?
That's a good question. So it is about a dry point of construction that there are a lot of youth out there and unemployment is looming. And I can testify for a fact that I know it's a government headache. They're probably thinking, how can they get those out of the streets? I know previously we used to have programs that were funded, like what is the national service? I know that in my time there was no Zambia National Service where they used to get youths directly from school or from the streets to decongest. But I think it's time that we started rethinking some of those programs. Because they will not only reduce crime, but they will then increase productivity. I think it's very important that programs for the youth, especially around creating and building capacity, is very, very important. And looking at the times we are in, I know there is COVID and the government could be pressed for resources, but it's an opportunity as well for the private sector to also kick in, because the private sector can also plow back the profits that they are making into this would be a sustainable type of project. So instead of throwing money at projects that just need any cash, let's now start thinking of sustainable projects. So this is a controversial one, I'm going to say. I know that there are a lot of companies in the name of marketing that would go and support a soccer team. And I know soccer means a lot in Zambia. But let's also think of getting a fair share and, sowing that seed or funding programs like for the youth, because the youth are the future of this country. So that's sustainability. Imagine if you supported a youth program, you have no idea how far-fetched the benefits will go, because that youth will start, standing on their own feet, and they will have a family, they will be able to feed them. That's the thinking we need to have. So let's not just plow money and put it in projects that, you can't even trace, and your money just goes down the drain. But let's think of more sustainable types of projects. But then at the same time, I can speak for example, for us, the Economics Association of Zambia. There's a deliberate project that we have come up with. We launched it sometime this week. We did a presentation. It's called Citizens Entrepreneur Development Program. So what we did was we sat down and we said, look, we've been talking about mining. The benefits are not being felt by everyone. We said, mining aside, not that we're saying it's not important. It is important. Then we said, what area of this economy can we look at which is not fully tapped? Agriculture. If you look at Zambia, Zambia has so much arable land. Zambia has potential to have even more cows than it has. Research that was done said that Zambia and South Africa put together can feed the whole Africa. If you look at what Zambia is producing now, yes, we've got a bumper harvest, 3.4 million tons. But research has shown that Zambia can actually produce up to 8 million metric tons. So where are we missing it? So what we decided to do was we are going to look at 3 areas. We're going to look at agriculture, we're going to look at mining, and we're going to look at urban development. So then we said, if you talk about agriculture, and you go and find a subsistence farmer, because we are tired of subsistence farmers that don't graduate into commercial farmers. Same subsistence farmer for 20 years, same people. We need that mindset shift. So then we said, if you go and find a subsistence farmer, what are the challenges they have? They will tell you, no, I don't have, I can't get a loan at the bank for inputs and everything. There's a company that we've partnered with, is Africa Green Resources. What will happen is, through that same initiative, that entity will give farmers inputs. The farmer doesn't have to worry about anything. All we need from the farmer is plant the crop, make sure you look after it. At the end of the day, we are coming to get the produce. Don't even worry about market access. We will deal with the market access ourselves, because we can't have farmers worried about market access and everything. Just manage growing the crop. Then we are also saying, when the crop comes out, when the crop is harvested, we will not worry about, there's a lot of funny things that happen where crops have to be transported to a different town for, we are saying we are going to take hammer mills, we are going to take rice shellers to where the crops are, so that the value addition process, we don't, prices are so elevated because of things that don't make sense, So why should you transport maize from the farm where it's grown to where the hammer mill is, instead of taking the hammer mill where the maize is, so that you value add and then you transport a finished product? So we are looking at value addition. So through doing that, we'll be empowering the youth, women, and subsistence farmers, and we are thinking of taking that to even livestock. So when we talk about livestock, when we talk about maize, it won't end there. We want the maize to be, instead of just talking maize, we want cornflakes. That's value addition. Instead of just talking cows, beef, we're talking about leather, hides. So you create that value. And we're targeting 1.2 million entrepreneurs within a space of 2 years.
What you are saying, Mr. Mutisonge, the project that my team and I went to present to His Excellency, the President, 3 weeks ago at State House, I must say that you should have phoned me so that we work together. Because, trust me, this is my view, and I speak not out of spite. The 3 areas you have looked at, mining, to me, it's something that, as a Zambian, I would not even want to be talking about. Let's leave mining to the government to handle it. Why do I say so? No mining has produced 1 single millionaire here. No mining has, from 1964, even before. You are not a beneficiary of that thing called the mine, KCM and whatever, Lumwana. Those guys are minding their business. They are taking the money. If you see, they even argue with the government. No, there is no profit, no profit. Have you seen the trucks that come from South Africa going to the mines? Big abnormal trucks. Some of the biggest trucks that I've ever seen on TV. They've passed through Zambia. So if there are no profits, why are you bringing a truck worth $5 million? Why don't you just keep it there and sustain? In the mining sector, if the government becomes serious and squeeze these guys, the problem is we fear of the international repercussions when our mineral resources are being depleted there. But for me, mining, I think as Zambians, let's ask the government to be our police, to be our security guard, to guard what is coming out of the mines, and make sure that those people account for the minerals that God gave us. Because once you dig, Mr. Mutisunge, you dig, where you are getting the copper from, God won't fill it up. It's forever gone. But it's going out there, and China is developing, Europe is developing from our resources. So let's put mine aside. Let's not even talk about it. Let's look at Zambians.
True.
Are you saying, like I believe, that when we concentrate on agriculture, we can raise our own millionaires?
Yes, we can. Then that's exactly what I'm saying. And we need to look at agriculture a step further. The World Bank did a report in 2015. It was called Agro-Based Structural Transformation. They've been singing the same song since 1964. Agriculture is the easiest way to manufacturing. Simple example. If you grow pineapples in Minilunga, those pineapples will need to be put in a can, ready for export. That's agro-processing. If I'm keeping livestock, if I'm growing soybeans, then I can start to produce stock feed. So all that. So agriculture should just not end at inputs in the ground or just rearing cattle. But we need to think of a mindset that has value addition. We need to start taking advantage of markets. God has blessed us with bumper harvests. Even in times when there was droughts, Zambia is always on top. DRC, East Africa, always have maize deficits.
Is it also true? I saw a document in the US. They said that the next set of billionaires will come from technology and agriculture. Do you agree with that?
I do agree. In fact, technology as an enabler was so much underestimated and is only being realized in COVID time. Everyone is talking technology. One would ask and say, how can technology and agric be together? Technology is what has allowed precision farming today. How will you know the amount of fertilizer to put exactly, so that you don't put too much or too little? Just what you know. Seeds, genetics, all that. That is technology. How seeds are being nurtured in order to increase crop yields. People are embracing technology. Technology will help with efficiencies. Technology will help with education. For example, the farmers need to be educated. So one doesn't have to travel to talk to another farmer. Like, say, we are depending on farmers who are very experienced from, say, South Africa. They can communicate through technology. So you'd see that technology as an enabler. Technology is a solution to, let me just say, all the sectors. And it's only now that technology is being embraced. So when you embrace technology, it is technology that is allowing Zoom calls. In this time, without technology, we would not have Zoom calls. So you'd see that the usage of data, the usage of mechanization and all that is then what is then improving crop yields, and it's actually very critical. So let me stray a little bit away. Zoom, when the guys came up with that Zoom, they didn't think that they didn't know that there was COVID. But Zoom today has more than, like, say, quadrupled in value, company size. It's just because everyone is using Zoom. So you'd see that it is actually true that it's going to be from agriculture and it's going to be from technology. Vaccines, for example, for this COVID, that is technology. All that is technology. The power solutions that we are looking at, how can you get electricity from cow dung and from sewage material? That is technology. So you see that chance favors the prepared mind. So those that will apply themselves and leverage off these two sectors will make money.
But there will be no technology that will replace hunger.
Well,
people have to eat.
People have to eat, exactly.
And that's where agriculture comes in, and we are in billions.
Yes. So these two, and that's why the emphasis for Zambia has been that we need to actualize this. We need to be deliberate about it. And that is why as EAZ, we just said we are going to go flat out and promote agriculture in this time.
Sorry, Mr. Mutisonge. As a pastor, I have seen, like you mentioned, the education system. If by any standard you look at the world, if I was going by what the world offers, to say for you to be here, you need to go to this school, you need to graduate from that school, I would not be interviewing you today. But what God has done in my mind and that of my wife is to give me the grace to see what other people don't see. Okay. The vision. And the Bible says, where there is no vision, people perish. If you can't see in the future. I tell this story. When I went to get the money from one of the banks to help us build this church, they said, no, you have no collateral. Now I'm asking for help. They are bringing in the issue of collateral. When we wanted to start this television, I'm asking for money to help us build, or just buy the cameras. Yes. They said, bring the bank statements. The statement didn't even go to the value of one camera. And they said, no, we can't. So you can see the bureaucracy. And by the special grace of God, the rest is under water, and I mean water under the bridge. Here we are, seated. What am I saying? I am saying until you people, the economists, team up with the politicians, because to me, politicians are suspect. They are suspect when they want a vote from somebody. They can promise you a 25 skyscraper building suspended in the sky, you know, and you vote for them. They bring promises which are unattainable, but they know they just want to be in power. They want to replace this one and that one. So that thing, marrying politics and the economics, how do we help the cadres from delinking them? You've got the brains. How do we go about it?
Okay, that's a good question. So I've always believed that economics and politics go hand in hand. It is very critical and evident, and I should say the structures that we have in place are very, very important, how we come up with those structures. Yes, you would have ministers being political because of course they are appointed.
Yes.
But for patriotic technocrats, because below ministers are technocrats. So the question is, how are we, the technocrats, applying ourselves? And I think that is what is very important. That's not to say that people that are politicians are not that important, but we expect a crop of politicians that understand some of the challenges that this country is facing. And I think the appointments as well should be on merit. Let me give a very good example. You go and appoint a finance minister that comes from, say, the central bank, because he understands monetary policy. But going to be a minister of finance, that is fiscal policy. So I think we need more rigor. We need more appointments on merit. And we also need these people to be attached and bound by some form of performance contract, the way it is done in other countries. So if you are ideally in the private sector, if a person is in a position, and I'll use this as a proxy, you have a performance contract. It is very clear what you have been put there to deliver. And you have ongoing discussions with your boss on a quarterly basis. What have you achieved? This, that, that. If you haven't achieved that, you're gone. You have failed. So we cannot have ceremonial positions where it's not evident that a person is not working. People need to work. If you have been elected, you need to work for the people. The people must see what you have really, really done for them at constituency level, all those other levels.
Is it right, sorry to ask this, Mr. Mutisung, is it right for you and me, Economic Association, the pastors and what, is it right for us to be blaming, like in this case, President Edgar Chagwa? He has failed, he has done this, he has done, is it right? Or if it's not, if it's right, how are we contributing to his failure?
Honestly, it is not right for us to place the blame on the president. That's number one. He's a leader, but he has a team. But one thing I need to be categoric about running of a country, an economy is not driven by a government. The government creates an enabling environment. Economies are driven by the private sector. It is the private sector that drives any economy. So the question is, has the private sector fully
been supported by the government?
Well, and vice versa at the same time. Has the private sector fully applied itself? That's the question we should be asking ourselves. So we're having this discussion about wealth creation because we've bemoaned that there are so many companies that have not grown the way they should be, meaning they're not contributing that much to the economy. We have a lot of SMEs. They have so many, many challenges. So that's where the dialogue now comes in to say, you've got a private sector. Your private sector is made up of your SMEs, your corporates, and everyone else in the private sector. Then you have the government who's an enabler. So now the discussions are is the environment enabling enough to spring birth SMEs so that one day they can be big corporates? Those are the discussions we have. You and I know that. You just gave me an example. Walking into a financial institution, they'll ask you for collateral. The collateral, the size of which, if you had that collateral, you wouldn't even be going to ask them for that. I talked about tax holidays. Tax holidays are given to big corporates that come in for 5 years. An SME that comes, you don't give them tax holidays, you tax them. So you find that it's been very difficult for those SMEs to then graduate, and it's been so much of a challenge. That is why now, to run any economy, you need a little bit of the public sector versus the private sector, which is now public finance, to avert market failure. The two need to work hand in hand. They need to start talking. The first time we had an economic summit, the reason why we had that summit was because of this same problem. When we went and visited a lot of companies, we did a roadshow. Went and visited. When we talked to the private sector, they told us, oh, you know what, we don't have access to the government officials. We've been writing letters. They don't respond. So then we said, we have access to the government, and we also have access to these guys. We are the go-between. Then we told ourselves, what can we do for Mother Zambia? We are patriotic citizens. I know a lot of people think we're very radical. Then we said, we're going to have a summit where we'll bring the government, we'll bring the private sector, we'll put them in one room. Let's have a summit, start talking to each other, find opportunities. So people then came up with what their pain points were. No, we've been failing to reach out. No, we feel like, for example, cement companies felt like they were being treated like mining companies, for example. They were, it was like the same kind of treatment. So we said the only way the government will know what the pain point is there, is if they start talking. And that's the role now that we play. We've continued to play. Some of the things that you have seen happening now, brainchild of the summit we had last year, we're still actualizing. People continue asking, saying, what was the outcome of that summit? A lot of things. This gold, this gold mining issue, that was a brainchild of the agriculture issues that we are discussing. That was a brainchild of the summit, and we have continued.
You have talked about enabling environment, Mr. Mutisunge. I'll give you a practical example. You see, right now, I'll use Camnet as a case study. To run an effective news, I'm just learning. There is a lot of news we are missing out in Imbala. There's a lot of news we are missing out in Kasempa. In the whole Zambia. What am I saying? For me to be able to run the news effectively and balance so, I need probably to station 5 people in every province. And that would demand vehicles. That would demand cameras. That would demand computers. Once we do, we can compete and give the world the best news that even CNN would come and quote and say, we monitored Camnet TV. Why? Because we are doing the best. They don't have to fly here to come and cover elections. They don't have, we'll give them the best and balanced news. But the question is, the government has created enabling environment. Where do I go to for cameras? Where do I go to for cars? Who will buy me the cars? That's a practical question you should answer, Mr. Montisum.
So, I couldn't agree more with your example. You are giving a scenario where you've thought out your business case and it's viable. But your issue is that if you sell that idea to a bank that you expect to be able to finance, they will tell you they've got no appetite for that, or because they haven't seen some form of collateral, which is a pain point, and which is the cry that we also have been asking financial institutions to start to take risk on local companies. I attended a workshop where there was Kafiwe Steel. Africa Development Bank came. There were a number of banking institutions represented, and the man was giving a testimony. And he said when they started, they had a bakery. They went to institutions to ask for finance, and no one gave them any penny because they didn't have collateral. So they started slowly but surely, and today they have built a business worth $200 million still. But guess what? After that business is now worth $200 million, the same institutions are running to them, asking them to open accounts with them. Have you seen how the world changes?
The irony of life.
Exactly. So I know that technology, we've spoken about technology. There's a lot that technology can do, and I hope the central bank is also listening. In the event that I can't give you collateral, or I don't have financial statements, because some entities will say, I'm a small company, I can't afford to hire an accountant, but I'm involved in some form of business. There is a way in which technology can be harnessed. I know some institutions are running that, where if I'm selling airtime, it will get that, they will get that data with which people buy airtime. I'm buying and selling. It then creates a credit score that can be used to determine whether this individual is creditworthy. So you see how technology has not been used in that area to be able to calculate an individual's creditworthiness. Because you can actually determine a person's credit score by checking how much he loads airtime on his phone. If I buy airtime using my phone and it's connected to my accounts, that in itself can determine my credit score. But we have not reached that stage yet. We're still at that stage which is very tedious, I'll ask you for your bank statements, I'll ask you for your collateral, and the world is now shifting.
I've asked that, Mr. Mutisonga, because I've been to America several times, and the pain is, you see, Americans, I've said this, and I won't stop. Americans, they finance a dream.
Yes.
Once they know that you can make Apollo 11, they'll finance it.
True.
But here, you have to make Apollo 11. Then they'll finance, they'll give you fuel. You know, this is...
I know.
So if I have the components to make Apollo 11, do I need the bank? So now, help me again, I'll take you back, because the government should have a deliberate policy to tell the people who own the money, the banks, to say when somebody comes with a dream and you judge it, please give them time. We are talking about national development. This Camnet TV, I'll tell you something. Why, one reason why my wife and I went into this. We were in some country, and the report that came about Africa and the African presidents, you just say, is this happening? And also, Zambia was included. And when I noticed I'm a Zambian, I'm sitting there, I said one day, I'll come up with a news channel, which will be watched right in Massachusetts, and will take our proper interpretation of the Africa.
True.
But you see now, nobody is looking at, let me finance Camnet TV, so that it becomes a tool to represent some companies which are local here. Everyone looks at you like, he's a preacher, what can you do? I'm just giving this as an example, because I know that Zambians are full of greatness. I know that. We can change this nation. There is no magic to it, Mr.
I agree.
Mutisunge. We can change this. We can bring millionaires into Zambia. We don't have to depend on other countries, I'm telling you.
We need more people like you, sir. That feeling you had when you saw negative publicity about Africa, including Zambia, and you birthed that thing inside your spirit, that forced you to then take a step and start Camnet TV, is the type of, that's the exact mindset shift we're talking about. People must see beyond. People must see. So you were able to turn a negative situation into a positive, but then also start generating money. And that is what wealth creation is. So that's the mindset that we are talking about, to say there's so much opportunity out there. So if we had 1,000 of your type, it would make a difference.
We are there, it's just that you haven't created the platform. Mr. Director, please open the phone lines. Those of you that can call on Zoom, on Skype, on phone, text, they are all there. And they are friends of ours that are in South Africa and in West Indies, in the UK, USA, wherever you are. We are talking about wealth creation for this nation. You know, Mr. Mutisunge,
Yes,
Zambia, geographically, is bigger than Britain.
I agree.
It's bigger than Britain. Zambia, materially, is far much richer than Britain. Why is it that year after year, we take a begging bow to a country which doesn't have the material that we have? Why?
Honestly, it's because we have allowed it. If I go back as far as colonialism, before 1964, I think I did mention that, look, we've gone through business cycles where ownership structures have changed. Once upon a time, we'd own the mines, but we don't own them anymore. And it's just something that is a sad state of affairs.
Absolutely.
And like I said, because most of our wealth is then managed by foreigners. Those foreigners then, externalize wealth to their countries. And so you find that it is our resources that are being used to develop where they live. And that's why where they live looks far much better than where we are. So resources are not being kept inside the country. And that's why we're where we are.
Let's just take a brief break just to listen to National Matters advert, and then we come back because people have got to participate.
Msika is here. We have you all covered with just 150 kwacha. You can advertise every day from 17 hours to 18 hours. For a 30-second ad, get the benefit of selling your products and services on Msika. For more details, call our marketing department on +260 953 995099 +260 962 444 726 or +260 971 177 467. Email us on info@camnettvafrica.com. Terms and conditions apply.
So it timed out.
Welcome back, Camnet TV viewers. In the studio with me, I have the General Secretary of the Economic Association of Zambia, Mr. Mutisunge Zulu, and he's been such a blessing. We are looking at wealth creation. Africa, you can make it, you will make it. Stop the dependence syndrome of just saying without China, without Germany, without this we can't. Yes, we need to work together, but you were born for greatness, each one of us, and I know we can make it. That said, Mr. Mutisunge, please help the Zambians, especially the Zambians. What must we do? Because when you talk about policy, I'll tell you one example. Many years ago, South Korea noticed that Tiger Woods brings in about $100 million in the economy of America, and those people are guarded heavily. We don't even know which university he went to, but he's bringing in $100 million, and the other Americans. So what they did was, in South Korea there is a program right now. Boys and girls, they don't go to school in the morning. They go to play golf, others soccer. And then around 16 hours, that's when they go to we don't even have the dream of saying, let's invest in soccer, so that we don't have players who, instead of heading the ball out, they are heading in their own goal. Soccer has become scientific. We've got to invest in that. So please help us again. How do we develop our own indigenous productive people?
Okay, so we have a lot of work to do. On the first of all, we'll start with the education sector. We need to relook our syllabus. We need to start teaching entrepreneurship. We need to give our trades institutes at tertiary level an entrepreneurial skill. We need to have those tough conversations around how financial institutions can also start taking risk on people with brilliant ideas and viable bankable types of projects. As for the government, we've got a lot of cleaning up to do as well. I think there have been very, very good initiatives such as the CEC, Citizens Economic Empowerment Commission. But it's sad to note that some people that collected money from there have never paid back. And which is what the handout mentality was that I was referring to.
Let's pick up this call, Mr. Motisonge. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Pastor.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling us from?
Pastor Chanda calling from Kitwe.
Mr. Chanda, please go ahead and contribute. I'm with Mr. Motisonge here.
Good evening, Mr. Mutusunge Zulu.
Good evening, sir.
Yes. Yeah, I think this program was come at the right time. You know, we need to have a wealth creation in our country. I know the fact that we have been following in government where they've got that program which is about to kick off just because of COVID. I think he was playing his interview. Now, Mr. Zulu, you know, I think the problem we also touched the one to our syllabus. You know, I think our education system needs to change radically because we've been talking about it. It's like our country, we are in so much, talking too much. We are theoretically, but practically we don't. We need now to be pragmatic. No, we have talked too much. I think from 1970, our forefather, the president, when we got independence, we started talking about going back to the land. Although that time, because of being youth, we wanted to enjoy to be in the urban, to be employed. You know, now it's this time we are realizing that had we heeded to what our forefather was saying, going back to the land, this time was really, even this period where we are experiencing COVID, I think Zambia would have been feeding the Africa, even the world.
Amen.
So, Mr. Zulu, I think what we are doing with your president, Mr. Abbas, I think that's why maybe they are calling you that you are radical. I think be radical. You need now to build the government and these private sectors together so that we make, you know, we develop our nation. Because if we just continue talking, we will end up nothing. We will end up doing nothing. So it's better now we become practical, we become pragmatic in doing things. Like you mentioned about the Zambia National Service, and that one was initiated by our forefather, the president. Although that time we didn't appreciate it, but this time now I'm realizing, although even I didn't attend national service, and I attended maybe this time I wouldn't even have been looking for a job. Maybe I would have gone back to the land. No, this time that you have seen, maybe they bring that idea now in a different way. Because that time, if you remember, it was like military oriented. Because that time there were sanctions from South Africa and Zimbabwe. So hence they had brought that program where those national services they used to defend our country. But this time, if we can go agriculture way, I think Zambia will be somewhere. Will be one of the best countries to be feeding the whole Africa, even the whole world. So we need to be now crafty. So what I'm urging you, the economic association of the time, please engage the government. Please engage the government and the private sector. You see what China has done. China is supporting its companies. If you look at all these companies which are in Zambia, they are being funded by the Chinese government. the Bank of China. All the loans they're getting from the government. Like the pastor said, when you wanted to start in the studio, when they wanted to build up the church, they went to our local bank. And if you look at the local banks, most of those are international banks. We don't have our own local bank, except maybe Zanaco. Those Zanaco this time, it has been also sold. Because there are just few shares which are Zambian. So if we want to have our own local bank where the government is engaged, so that when we go there, if we get our loans, they want us to correct it. Because that they will know that this money
So,
we need.
Mr. Chanda.
So I need you, Mr. Zulu, please engage the government.
Mr. Chanda, I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir, Pastor.
If I start a bank tomorrow, will you be one of my clients?
Definitely. If you don't ask for correction.
Now you hear where you are going. I'm saying, will you start bringing your salary? Will you say this is a Zambian bank started by Pastor Chiloba? Will you start saving with me?
Definitely, Pastor. I will start saving. I will open an account to that.
That's the point.
I will open an account to that bank because I know that is my bank. I need to support our local. They are saying that local is Lhasa. So we need to support our local company. So Mr. Zuru, please engage the government. We need now to be practical. Let us now stop talking too much. We need to go flat out now. Bring the reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. There you are, Mr. Zulu. You have heard what he has said.
Spot on. I think more on implementation rather than we've spoken too much. And I think for us, that's why we've decided to take and go with that program and say, look, we can't talk for long. We need to act.
One of the things that my wife and I and our team are doing is that we have this, I talk about this agricultural dream. You've been hearing it?
Yes, sir.
And we have dubbed it as the potential within. And this thing will be a game changer on this soil. I know what I'm talking about. Now, one of the things that we want to do as a team, like last 2 weeks ago, I was supposed to be in Solwezi to address the people in Solwezi, but because of COVID, I was advised, Pastor, don't go there. First, let's calm the situation. One of the things we need to do is to educate the people through seminars. We have a gathering. There's a call. Let's pick up this call. Hello?
Hello, good evening, Pastor.
Good evening to you, sir.
I'm Mwamba calling you from Kitwe.
Mwamba Chisanga.
Yes.
Mr. Mwamba, please go ahead and contribute. I'm with Mr. Zulu.
Good evening, Mr. Zulu.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, I think I've been following this topic. I think the biggest problem we have in Zambia is the government and the policies. I'll give a practical example. Here in Kitwe, when you come at Chamboli Market, there is a China supermarket of some sort. What that supermarket has done is kill the Zambian literature in Tembani. Because the products that are being sold there were previously being sold by Zambian small businesses. But we all know Zambian small businesses can't compete with the Chinese. So this kind of policies kill Zambian small businesses. How am I going to excel as a Kantemba when my biscuits are not being sold, are also being sold in a China supermarket? Again, look at it in the terms of farmers. Farmers can't find easy access to export their products directly because of some government policies that are there. The scandals of Unkula is a very good example, which we all heard through the media, various media, has been curtailed by government officials, but not local farmers themselves. So I think the biggest issue is the government. If the government can bring up policies that to create a base for a mayor Zambian to give us a platform in short, to establish that's a small business which can rise. And reduce on taxes as well. That will help a mayor Zambian who is down on the ground.
I think
and most of the businesses, first again, if I'm going to excel, I have to be politically inclined to some party. So that's why I'm saying everything comes down to the government. And Mr. Zulu, you have a big challenge to intermarry the government, the politics, and mayor Zambians who are not even inclined to any political thing, but trying to establish themselves is becoming difficult because of the political situations. Everything is politicized now.
Mr. Mwamba, Mr. Chisanga, let me say this before you hang up.
Yes, Pastor.
3 weeks ago, my team and I went to see the president at State House.
I heard of that, yes.
You heard of that?
Yes,
now,
I follow Cabinet News, yes.
Okay, now my wife and I and the team, we had a concept. We have this dream, which we sold to the government.
Yes.
And the president graciously embraced us, and he gave us the openings in Zambia to say, Pastor Chiluba, you have my blessings. What I'm saying is this, Mr. Mwamba. Sometimes, like you said earlier, we blame the government too much, and we are not helping the government. Because I went with my idea. I didn't go there to beg money from the president. I sold the idea to the president, and he's very excited, knowing that this is Zambian thing. He's just waiting for us to implement. So if we say the government, this, the government, I'm not defending the government, but if you heard Mr. Zulu, he said we need an enabling environment. And in that environment, we need Zambians with ideas. That's what you said, eh?
True.
That the government benefits from the private sector.
Yes.
So I think I appreciate what you are doing. The government has a role to provide shelter, to provide water, to provide this health. It is our rights. But at the same time, on Cabinet TV, Mr. Chisanga, I think let's come up with ideas that we will sell to the government so that the government can buy our ideas.
You are very right, Pastor. That's why I started with giving an example of just some China malls that have been created to kill off Zambian markets, Zambian businesses. So the issue, my concern is not more of ideas. Ideas we have.
So why didn't you bring them?
The policies, some of these policies are making it extra difficult for us to excel. I'm saying this, we might be some small businesses who have been dumped on so much. That's why I'm saying this.
Yeah, no, you are right. You are right. And you are right, Mr. Chisanga. Between this channel and the cabinet, you are saying that the government should have a deliberate policy to favor cabinet.
The government should have a deliberate policy to prioritize Zambia and the secondary foreigner.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We are speaking the same language. I'm saying your view is that the government should help Cabinet TV, which is a local station, than a foreign station, if we are going to grow.
Number one. Yes.
Yeah, and if we are going to favor a boutique, the Bank of Zambia employees should buy from should buy from Mr. Zulu instead of buying from the boutique from there. What are you making out? Sorry about that, Mr. Chisanga is been cut. Yeah, what are you saying?
Well, I think if we start to trust Zambian entities, give each other business, then we are creating a model that will keep wealth within our jurisdiction. I like the example you've given to say, fine, if the people from the central bank will then buy from a boutique that's from a Zambian, then you're promoting a Zambian that way. But the challenge as well should be also that Zambians should be able to deliver goods of competitive quality. So it's a double-edged sword. On one end, yes, we can complain and blame, but the question is, the challenge and the onus is on us as well if we're going to run businesses to be able to provide services and products that compete favorably. And that's where sometimes we don't do well with export on the international markets. Because when it comes to exporting and having your products out there, people will not look at governments. They'll just look at the standard of if I'm making shoes, for instance, they will say, these shoes that are coming from Zambia versus these shoes that are coming from Italy, if we put them, are they at par? So those are other areas as well. And that's sometimes where those who are of low standard, cause other people to suffer because of that shadow they've created. For example, if you're given to do a contract and you don't deliver, the next time, even those that are genuinely able to do the job, the stereotype would be, oh, we gave that contract to a Zambian who was unable to deliver. So it's also important that even our mindset shift should be one where we go and deliver products and services that are of competitive standard. Once we meet that mark, then export will not be a problem. And once we start to export, then Forex will not be a problem. But if we can't penetrate the international market, it's a problem. Already we are grappling with us supplying our own market. There are other examples, such as in this COVID time, we were anticipating that if they close the border with South Africa, then food might be an issue. Then they said, okay, fine, supermarkets, let's look to local farmers to produce vegetables. But you see, the problem we also have with local farmers is scale. We don't think together. You know those cooperatives where we can put our produce like an outgrower scheme and then go and supply together. No, everyone wants to get rich. No one is thinking of saying, you know what, if I go as an individual, ShopRite won't buy from me. But if 20 of us put our produce together, it's different.
Let's pick up this as our last call. And yes, good evening.
Good evening, Pastor, and good evening, the other Mr. Zulu.
Good evening,
Good
sir.
evening, sir. What's your name and where you calling us from?
I'm calling you from Kalumbila.
And your name? Your name?
From Kalumbila, Mwanamai.
Yeah, reduce the volume so that we can go neck to neck. We have a few minutes and we'll be closing. Reduce the volume so that the moment I stop talking, you are able to respond. If you start listening to the TV, we may take more time. Yes, Mr. What's your name from Kalumbila?
Michelo Charles is my name.
Michelo.
Michelo Charles.
Michelo.
Michelo.
Olikelo.
Mitelo.
Okay, let's say Charles, eh?
Exactly.
Please go ahead with your contribution. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Pastor. First of all, God bless you for the work that you are doing.
Amen.
Indeed, I have followed that discussion. We need progressive minds in our country, Zambia. For us, one of the key factors that I've realized in our country is that the mindset of the general popular is really, really shameful to boast about, even when we have flown to other countries. When one individual has a positive idea and they wish to present it, rather to develop it, there is also a negative attitude in advancing the plan. But I said generally, for us to come out of the pool of poverty, we need to change the mindset.
Absolutely.
We have all the resources in our country. We have the waters in our country. We have the trees in our country. We have soil in our country. We can come out of the pool of poverty if only we work on our mindset.
That's right.
I have been looking at fish farming this morning. If indeed 17 million Zambians could each one of them come up with a 25 by 5 square meter, and they only put in 5,000 fingerlings at a cost of 1,500 kwacha, with fresh water flowing, all the 17 million population in our country will come out of the pool of
It is the mindset that we need to work on.
That's right.
Otherwise, Pastor and Mr. Zulu, please let us see how we can educate on mind change, the mindset. And above all, we should not forget that God has endowed Zambia with all the resources.
Absolutely.
We cannot progress as a country without God. God must be first. And
Oh, sorry about that. Just in conclusion, we are in 2 news time, Mr. Zulu. Have you heard what he has brought?
Yes, sir.
That if every Zambian can just have a pond,
25
you know,
by 5.
we can export fish from here.
Yes.
And those are the minds I work with. Me. He hasn't talked about saying, oh, the 17 million Zambians, let's go back to university.
No.
He's talking about ideas and the mindset. Your last words, Mr.
So, I think mindset shift is the catchword for today, and it's a very, very significant component in wealth creation. I just read a saying when I was coming 5 minutes before the show. It said, imagination, it was by Albert Einstein. He said, imagination is far much more important than knowledge. Knowledge has boundaries. Imagination can encompass the whole world in a person's mind. So we're supposed to be limitless. So that mindset shift is connected to imagination. We need to start dreaming big. And when we can dream big, then we run with the vision. This country would be totally different. Let's take away the blame from the government entirely. And I think we can go on blaming the government, but it won't solve any problem. I think what we need to focus on is now going forward, how can we change this nation? We shouldn't worry about who caused what and why are we here. Look, that's a discussion for another time. But as for, let's think about, changing the landscape, this nation. And it starts with baby steps. And let's also be forward thinking, and let's look in the long term. Let's not always be myopic and think making money just in the next 2 years. No, let's plan ahead. Let's make money. Let's think and say, in the next 50 years, where do we see this country? Let's think about our children, grandkids, great-grandchildren. If we start planning like that, that's more sustainable. Then we're able to keep wealth for a longer time.
Wow. Mr. Zulu, I thank you so much. And please, this is your station.
Thank you.
As Economic Association of Zambia, thank God for Mr. Abazoka and your team.
Thank you.
Like our last caller said, that we need to change the mindset. All these people have contributed, Pasco Chanda, Vachisanga. If only we believe in ourselves.
Yes.
The late uncle of ours, Mr. Simon Kapwepwe, said then, he said, these colonizers you have chased out of Zambia, be careful. They'll come back in the name of investors. How profound that statement was.
Yeah.
These colonizers you have chased, they will come back in the name of investors. Whoever thought about investors at that time?
No.
Now we are receiving, like the man is saying in Vachsanga, you are finding a Chinese selling the same clothes. How do you compete with somebody who has never been to China? Not even UK. And they are even cooking in Shima. Anyway, Shalande Fin. But Zambia, you were born for greatness, Mr. President, and the entire nation of Zambia. Let's come together. Let's not point fingers at one another, like you said. Who did what? Why we didn't do it? Forget about that. Let's come together. You were born for greatness. Keep watching Camnet TV. I've been your host, Pastor Chiluba, with my able guest, Mr. Mutisunge Zulu, who is the Secretary General of the Economic Association of Zambia. Keep watching Camnet TV, because you know that Camnet TV is not just another channel. We'll see you.